Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's trip to Nigeria raised a lot of eyebrows within the royal watcher community, as the couple seemed to very much emulate royal duties during a quasi-royal tour. Really, the cosplay royal moniker really does fit them. But while royal tours are essentially ways to be diplomats, to be able to increase positive relations between two countries, Harry and Meghan's tour ventured often into the realm of simply bizarre, as Harry and Meghan seem to take this opportunity to embrace an entire new family in Nigeria while they reject their own closest family members. There's also Meghan's wardrobe, which was outrageously expensive, and inconsistencies of the narrative of the purpose of the visit left many people scratching their heads going, why are they doing this? Because obviously they left the royal family. Now, of course, they did not leave the way they wanted to. They still wanted a quasi-royal role, and the Queen and the rest of the royal family rejected that idea. But Harry and Meghan seem hell-bent on continuing their vision of what royal life should be like. And unfortunately for the rest of the royal family, I really think it is damaging the brand of the monarchy, because Harry and Meghan are not royals. They represent nothing but their own business interests. And as the royal family continues to let them go on and on, it's increasingly damaging the royal family's reputation abroad. Because yes, although the British government did essentially say that no, this trip had nothing to do with the United Kingdom and they had no connection to the visit whatsoever, and it should not be taken as a diplomatic visit, the rest of the world, and especially many in the United States, just simply don't even understand the difference between what royals do and what Harry and Meghan are doing, and how Harry and Meghan are really attempting to cosplay what Catherine and William, Charles and Camilla and the other members of the royal family do while on tour. But this could end up having really disastrous results, because this could end up damaging relations potentially between the United Kingdom and Nigeria, which could have far-reaching implications than just simply hosting Harry and Meghan. These are far more complicated things than people like to present oftentimes on social media. And we will dive into this today because it's so important to understand what royals do and how Harry and Meghan get it so entirely wrong for the entirely wrong reasons. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany. I provide y'all compelling royal commentary, so feel free to hit that subscribe button. I would love to have you back. We talk about Harry and Meghan, other royals. We have the Crown Report that usually comes out about weekly, which I'm still in the process of tweaking, but I'm so excited about this opportunity to share with you not only about what Harry and Meghan are doing, which is important again in the context of the grand scheme of what monarchies stand for, but also all the other royals and the amazing work they're doing, because we have a state visit today between Norway and Denmark, and we will have an official state banquet tonight. So tiaras are in the offing. I will be working on a tiara video that will come out either Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on how much time I have, because I love tiaras and I think it is so fun to explore the history, the beauty, and the artistry behind these amazing pieces. And before we go on to, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Ana Lucia Diamonds, which is supplying my jewelry today that I have been wearing on this recent trip. I have my tennis bracelet here, my necklace, some stud earrings, which I love and I keep in all the time. So if you guys are interested in any of that, I will put a link up above and a link down below. And if you use code REAL20, you will save 20%. Okay, guys, this Nigerian tour, I have a lot of thoughts on it, and it's been hard to sort of pull back the thoughts because it was so weird in many ways. It was an utterly bizarre visit because it was so like a real tour, yet so not, so self-indulgent, so confusing in its messaging that I really think damaged Harry and Meghan's brand overall, and damaged, of course, their relationship continually with the British monarchy and potentially even the British government's relationship with Nigeria, because Nigeria put a lot of stock in Harry and Meghan. And unfortunately, Harry and Meghan have nothing to offer them. So this is my first point. I decided to pull it into points. My first point is looking at them as cosplay royals, because royal tours have an important function. It's an opportunity to increase diplomatic relationships between two countries. So when the royals come, let's say Catherine and William go to the Caribbean, they tour various historical sites, cultural sites. They also meet with usually local business people. They go to villages and experience life at different levels within this country. They meet with political figures and those sorts of things. And yes, they cannot create policy. They cannot determine the trade agreements between the United Kingdom and, let's say, Belize. But what they can do is smooth relationships. They can create bridges that connect these two countries together for the future. And yes, Belize is, of course, a Commonwealth country. But let's say in the instance of the trip between Germany and Poland and the United Kingdom with Catherine and William, again, it was a way for them to reach out to the public, out to public officials, and create these sort of better relationships between two countries. That is what royals do. And because of these better relationships, because often political figures and those sorts of things do sort of accompany them, the ambassador to, let's say, Poland will be on a lot of the meetings Catherine and William are having between, let's say, the president of Poland and those sorts of things, or the prime minister. I'm not sure what it is. But because of that, there's relationships that are built and that will continue to grow over time, because having a royal there in your country, especially on an official state visit, may mean you get something officially from the United Kingdom in some way. Let's say a good trade agreement, you're wanting Eurovision or something to be hosted there. I don't know. I don't really know how Eurovision works, but let's go with it. Or just different things. Because you have this relationship with the royals, it can translate into relationships with the prime minister. When Harry and Meghan went to Nigeria on this quasi-royal tour, they had nothing to offer Nigeria in that way. So it was completely inappropriate in many ways for Nigeria to host them as they were, which was as diplomats, because they're not diplomats. They are not building relationships between, let's say, Nigeria and the UK or Nigeria and the United States, because Harry and Meghan literally cannot do that. They have no functionary to do that. They represent simply their own business interests. So is Nigeria going to be uplifted by Harry and Meghan doing their tour? Are they going to get better oil deals for selling their oil? Are they going to get, let's say, a better trade agreement between different countries? No. They might get the off chance of hosting the Invictus Games in Nigeria, which was sort of the reason for this visit. But even that doesn't make a ton of sense, because logistically, I think most of us with any knowledge of foreign relations and the differences between certain countries and stuff and the safety risks in Nigeria would know that there's just no shot of the Invictus Games being hosted in Nigeria. I'm sure in some instances, some governments would say, no, we can't go. It's too much of a risk, because there is a Muslim insurgency problem in Nigeria. It's mostly to the north. But if you have a bunch of soldiers from the West, all veterans coming in, do you want to bet that's going to be a target? Oh, heck yeah. And that's not only Nigeria. You also have Chad, you have Niger, you have Libya, you have Algeria. You have so many countries where insurgency is an issue. So if they invite all these often Western soldiers to Nigeria, which is much more navigable for most insurgents than, let's say, England or France in many ways, yeah, you want to bet they're going to show up, because they simply can. It's on the same continent. Yes, far away. I get that. But when you have an ocean between you, it's much more difficult to get a place when you can simply drive. So I think the idea that the Invictus Games is going to be hosted there is just sort of a joke. So what does Nigeria get out of this? Because essentially they hosted Harry and Meghan as if they were still the son of the king and the daughter-in-law of the king, working royals representing the UK. But again, what can they offer Nigeria at the end of the day? What can they offer them? Now, yes, Meghan has her whole heritage connection. I get that. But beyond that, there's just really nothing there. And so the cosplay royal element here, I think, is really damaging at the end of the day, because Nigeria is going to want something for this. And so if Harry and Meghan say, oh, no, you can't host the Invictus Games, will they be okay with that? Will they be upset about that? What will they feel about that? I don't know. And will that be good or bad for Harry and Meghan? I can't really say, but you run a danger of promising something you can't deliver on. And I wonder if this trip in many ways was promising something that they knew would never, ever happen, but they needed a tour to promote the Invictus Games, and they decided to utilize Nigeria to do that. Again, it still just doesn't make a whole ton of sense. And so let's go ahead and listen to one gentleman who was talking to the BBC and asked about Harry and Meghan's visit. And you will see here, he is describing exactly what I'm talking about.
If Harry visits Nigeria today or tomorrow, what effect does it have in our economy? Harry is coming and Nigeria is going to spend billions. Look, Nigerians are dying. Everybody is frustrated over economic hardship, and Prince Harry is coming all the way from British Dynasty to visit Nigeria. It's a wasting of resources.
That gentleman is 100% correct. The visit was a waste of resources. It was a waste of money, because he's right. Will their visit help the economy? Probably not. I mean, sure, maybe some Uber Sussex stands might be interested in going to Nigeria, but why? What does it benefit them? It doesn't benefit them. And so it's a huge waste. They probably spent millions of dollars hosting Harry and Meghan, providing all this funds for their security, maybe even paying their hotel bills. But at the end of the day, the people get nothing for it. The people get nothing for it but an endless parade of photos and videos and a woman wearing six figures worth of clothing and jewelry almost constantly. And that is not going to help the child starving in the streets. It's just not. And so, in so many ways, the optic of this visit really does look quite bad. And optics are important because the image you portray to the world really does matter at the end of the day, because that is what people take home with them. What is the image you are projecting? What is the purpose? What is the point? And sometimes I don't always do that as well as I should in these videos, because I actually do these without really a script. I sometimes have some notes in terms of like an outline essentially, but I don't really have much. I just go off the cuff in many ways. But when it comes to this visit, Harry and Meghan needed to have a purpose to it. And I don't know what that was, because yes, it seemed like it had a two-for deal: to celebrate Meghan's heritage, which seemed to take precedence, and to promote the Invictus Games in Nigeria and potentially host the Invictus Games in Nigeria. And we've already gone over that. I mean, that second option is just ain't going to happen. They're probably never going to host the games in Nigeria. Let's be quite honest. I mean, they could, but again, it'd be a logistical nightmare. It's not easy to get to some areas of Africa. It's a bit harder. You have flight issues. You have the security issues. I mean, look at all the security surrounding Harry and Meghan. Imagine all that, bringing all these veterans in and their families and their children. I mean, just so many risks. It just doesn't make any sense. So what was the point? Because they sort of promoted the Invictus Games, but at the same time too, they're not promoting the Invictus Games the way they should. Even the Invictus Games itself, its social media profiles didn't really post anything about the visit until the last day. And they reposted, at least in one instance, a video from the Nigerian team for the Invictus Games, which is fine. And they did finally do a bit of a breakdown of the visit, but it seemed weird as well that if this event is to, or the purpose of this trip is to promote the Invictus Games, they should have had the Invictus Games social media team there to take pictures, to share videos, to all these sorts of things, and not having to rely on third parties to do it. And so in that way, it looked like something that was maybe not totally sanctioned by the Invictus Games itself, or maybe something Harry and Meghan decided to do more on the side because they weren't willing to pay the extra money to have the Invictus staff go there to Nigeria with them. And that is a problem, because if it is, again, to promote the Invictus Games staff should be there. There were one or two people there, but at the end of the day, much of the focus was just on Harry and Meghan. And obviously the other thing, which we will get to at the end, is Meghan's heritage. And we will talk about this a bit more, but if the purpose of the visit was to promote her heritage, I mean, sure, that's awesome. But I feel like most of the rest of the world doesn't go to, let's say, England, because most of my family is from England and Scotland and a bit from Scandinavia. I'm not going to bring a whole news cruise there to share my visit and excitement over learning more about my family, because it's more of a personal thing. It's not really a necessarily always a public thing. And with Meghan, how is it publicly, you have this connection to Nigeria, great, good, awesome. But how is this going to affect your public profile going forward? Are you going to do a lot more things in Nigeria? Are you going to live in Nigeria? Because I had somebody on my comments here in one of the videos saying, well, Meghan's now officially a Nigerian princess. So her title now is Princess Meghan. I was like, well, if she's Princess Meghan from Nigeria, shouldn't she just drop the British pretense and just go by Nigerian? But of course, we know she's not going to do that. But again, the narrative there just doesn't make a ton of sense, because you have two competing things and none of them seem to mesh well together. In fact, they seem contradictory, because if this was going to be about the Invictus Games, that should have been the sole focus. If this was going to be about Meghan discovering her heritage, that should have been the sole focus. But the other idea that some people have posited, and I think is somewhat true, is that this is Harry and Meghan's sort of revenge on the monarchy for denying them the opportunity to still be ambassadors for the Commonwealth. Because Harry and Meghan have been obsessed with the Commonwealth and this idea that they are the perfect ambassadors for it because of Meghan's skin color. And I'm sorry, but I don't think her skin color determines that she is the best person for the Commonwealth, because obviously King Charles, of course, is king. He is head of the Commonwealth. William will one day be head of the Commonwealth. And I don't think it's something where it necessarily should be defined by color. That's just my personal opinion. And at the end of the day, too, the Commonwealth is not necessarily a reflection of, you could say, race and colonialism. It's really about trade. That's the purpose of the Commonwealth. That's why people join the Commonwealth, is so that they can get a generous trade agreement with the United Kingdom. And Harry and Meghan forget that. They were head of, I can't remember, the Queen's Foundation or something related to the Commonwealth. It was young people within the Commonwealth, and they would have been great ambassadors. But here's the thing. Harry and Meghan have said they don't want to be royal anymore. They left. They voluntarily left. And they were told they couldn't get what they want. So if you were told you can't get what you want within an agreement or an exit strategy, you can make the decision, okay, do I want to stay to fulfill that role? Or do I just want to do something else? Harry and Meghan are trying to bridge both worlds, which is why they fail so often, is they're trying to do both things at the same time. Because the other problem with this trip is they're claiming to be royals. They're having everybody refer to them as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. They're using HRH, which they cannot use, as Her Royal Highness, which they cannot use. That was stripped of them. They were told they cannot use, I mean, it wasn't technically stripped from them, but they were told they cannot use it. And yet they are constantly using it within Nigeria. Because the thing is you can't have it both ways. Because you can't represent anything other than your own business interests, you really shouldn't be royals here in this situation, because it's damaging the Britain. Because every time you say, I'm the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, even though you were not representing the UK, many people think you are. Even that gentleman in the video I showed, listen to this little bit. He says Harry came from Britain. I mean, he technically did, but he's technically coming from America now. He's not even British really anymore in some ways. He has rejected that. He has said at some points that, he sees America as his home. Great. Well, then why are you clinging to your Britishness in terms of your titles? They either have to pick a lane. You either need to be royal and accept all the restrictions thereof, which are, I admit, they're tough, they're difficult. I don't think it's a life necessarily everybody wants to live, but sometimes great privilege results in great responsibility, and that's the way royalty is. Or they need to reject their royal titles and just move on, be Harry Sussex, Meghan Sussex, whatever, and try to make a go of it that way. It's bridging these two worlds, I think, is causing a great amount of confusion. And Harry and Meghan are profiting off that to the detriment of Charles, William, George, and the future of the British monarchy. And it's very aggravating that Charles refuses to do anything about it, or seems to refuse to do anything about it. Because yes, it would require an act of parliament, but could be done. And I think always, and this makes sense, is that the government will stay back and say, okay, Charles, we'll wait for you to move forward. When you move forward, then we will also move forward. But until that point, we're sort of staying back, because it's not necessarily that they want Charles's permission, but they want his acceptance that yes, he is willing to go all the way. But Charles, again, just doesn't seem to want to do that quite yet. He seems to kind of cling to this notion of, well, maybe Harry will come around. I mean, the truth is, unfortunately, Charles, is Harry's not going to come around at this point. He is this sopping wound that you need to sort of stench the bleeding from, and you need to stitch it up. And you need to separate these two things now, because Harry has left. He's made his choice, and it's a choice he's going to have to live with. And because he's going to have to live with this choice, he's going to have to figure out, again, how to move forwards without Harry, because Harry has made his decision. Charles needs to accept that, and they need to stop this madness, because it is damaging the British monarchy, especially with a largely American audience, which doesn't understand the intricacies of what a royal visit is, what it entails, why it's important, why they do certain things. Because they see Harry and Meghan, they see them being pseudo royals, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess the royals do that too. No, they don't do that. But most people, again, they don't know that. So the more Charles can separate the two, I think the better off the royals will be. But until they do that, they're sort of stuck in this limbo here that just doesn't seem to be getting any better. And I think the other thing to talk about, and this is very odd to me, is that the Sussex squad apparently has an actual group of people in Nigeria who are very obviously fanatical about Harry and Meghan. They were walking around with like little Instagram posters, putting their pictures in it. Somebody had a sign that says, Harry, you owe us a dowry, and just so many things, like, and signs that said, from the Sussex Squad. And guys, I've been to a lot of royal events. I've seen a lot of excitement over royals. I've never seen anything quite like that. It's getting into a bit of the realm of weird. Because yes, people like royals. And again, I went to the Dog and Duck to see Catherine and William because the press told us there would be a walkabout. I was like, oh, this is a great chance to see them. I got there super early. There were even some photographers that had been there early as well. I got a great spot. And it ended up being that Catherine came down our line. I got a selfie with her. It was great. And she was great chatting with people and everything. But there was nobody there who was like, all dressed alike, like the Sussex Squad was in Nigeria, cheering, kind of doing this fangirl reaction thing that sort of reminds me of like middle school, to be quite honest. I've never seen anybody in a real watching space really act like that. There's a sense of reverence and respect that I don't feel like exists for Harry and Meghan because it's almost more of a fanatical worship than it is a, oh my gosh, this is so exciting to see a royal. And again, people are excited. Sometimes you get little squeals and stuff like that. Totally and completely understandable when you see a royal. It's very exciting. But the same way too, it's I want to say there's a sort of not a reverence in a bad way, but a reverence for the roles that they play. People are very, very respectful. And I don't feel like the Sussex Squad exemplifies that. In fact, it's sort of again that they had these people there dressed the same, going to all the events, squealing. Listen to this video when Harry and Meghan came by.
Oh my gosh, she was there.
Yes, it's interesting. I definitely would not do that. And again, I've seen a royal, I've chatted with royals, I've shaken Catherine's hand. I just want to get that way. And I haven't seen anybody else within the royal space, any royal event I've been at, be that way. People bring posters, people are excited. But there's sort of an understanding that there's a role royals play. They're not celebrities. Harry and Meghan with the Sussex Squad and everything are being treated like celebrities. And unfortunately, too, that Sussex Squad mentality, which was shown in Nigeria, has a presence online too. And it's very virulent, it's very aggressive. And again, very disconnected to what royals actually do. And I think it does Harry and Meghan no favors to be seen supporting that effort because the Sussex Squad has an ugly reputation. And that ugly reputation, because they claim to act on behalf of Harry and Meghan, reflects on Harry and Meghan too. It really does. And so, from a PR perspective, the best thing they could do is keep their distance from it rather than indulging them, rather than there's, a picture of Meghan all surrounded by them, getting her picture taken in with them. And yes, of course, they're excited and I get that. But at the same time, too, the reputation of the Sussex Squad is bad. And the more Harry and Meghan cavort with them, the worse they end up looking. Because I've been on the receiving end of it. I know so many other people have as well. As they are pretty ugly people online in terms of the actions and behaviors, the stalking, the harassment, so many different things, because you just don't like Harry and Meghan. It leans on the idea of almost fanatical worship. And yes, some of that exists on the royal side too. I don't like everything some royal supporters post, but I feel like especially on the Harry and Meghan on their side of the aisle, it gets very extreme. Now we saw this extreme being expressed here is just a little bit concerning. And I think Harry and Meghan should take great stock in who they associate with because it does reflect on them. And in the case of the Sussex Squad, it reflects badly. Now, I will do a whole video on this on my fashion channel because I will look at every look. I will dissect every look. But Meghan Markle's wardrobe, according to the Daily Mail, I think it reached upwards of 130,000 pounds or $130,000 for her wardrobe for 3 days. Even the last final picture that we got, probably posted somewhere on social media, she's wearing an outfit where I think the jacket is like $3,000, a pants are $3,000, something like that. It's incredibly, incredibly expensive. And most of the outfits were, in terms of a real standard, inappropriate. Because again, this is the thing I say where you can't live in both worlds. If she's going to claim a royal title and seem to act royal, then she needs to adopt a royal dress code. If she doesn't want to abide by that, drop the title. It's that simple. It's that simple. Because her dressing there was highly inappropriate. We had cutouts, we had spaghetti straps. We had one picture where, yes, it was partially the camera guy for being so low and getting the picture, but when you have a slit in a dress that's really high that goes up the front of the dress, I don't particularly like those slits. I find them a bit vulgar, to be quite honest. On the side, I feel like it's much better because it's kind of venturing into potentially dangerous territory for her there. But if she had chosen a more appropriate dress, she wouldn't have to worry about, a flashing incident or something like that. I mean, it didn't happen, but that's the concern that she should always be aware of, is that at some point, maybe she might flash somebody if depending on where the camera guy's at, because you can't determine where the camera guy is going to be. So why not dress appropriately? Now, yes, of course, people have said Catherine has had her own wardrobe malfunctions, but it's different when a dress simply rides up or gets caught in the wind and you're not aware that that might happen, compared to, in Meghan's instance, wearing a dress with spaghetti straps that cut out and a slit way up the front. Those are conscious decisions. And obviously, most of the time, it was either strapless, spaghetti straps. We had some weirdness where it seems sometimes she was very flat chested, and then she had more of a bosom in certain pictures. It was just sort of all over the place. But I think the big thing is it was excessively expensive. Meghan Markle, since joining the royal family, has had this absolute obsession with having as much jewelry as humanly possible. The more expensive, the better. And she demonstrated that a lot of it was jewelry that she had worn, like some of it, a lot of the expense came from jewelry, unnecessary jewelry. It's like you don't need to have a new diamond necklace for every event, and you don't need to have a number of rings, bracelets. You don't need to add a subtract. She does so many different things to add. I mean, because one of the things, there was a necklace worth $15,000. She also wore an evil eye bracelet, which I cringe at the very notion. And that was, I think, $18,000, $20,000. And then she wore a couple pieces of Diana's jewelry, not the best jewelry because she didn't get the best, like this necklace bangle. And then she also had this cross and necklace, which I don't think we've ever seen a picture of Diana wear, which I thought was kind of funny. And so she wore all these things, and some of the dresses cost thousands of dollars. And there was, of course, the Carolina Herrera dress. It was, almost $4,000. And the first time she wore it, it was to her son's first birthday. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I think it would be a little odd to wear a $4,000 gown during COVID, in the height of COVID, when nobody else is in the house. You, your husband, your mother, and your son, who is one. Don't think you probably need a $4,000 Carolina Herrera dress to enjoy the festivities. But again, maybe that's just me. But the message that it's sent, though, that's what's bad here. Again, I'll go over the individual fashion in a fashion video on my channel, Royal Fashion News. If you're interested, I'll put a link up above. But when it comes to royal tours, it's all about diplomatic dressing. You dress from local designers. You dress from designers of your country. And Meghan sort of followed that guideline a bit, because she did have American designers. She did also wear a couple of Nigerian pieces. Not much, though. You almost get the impression with the red spaghetti strap dress that people kept telling her, oh, you need to wear color. And she ran out and grabbed that one because she needed something that had color. And she felt kind of a little bit embarrassed that she didn't really have anything. Although she did wear an appropriate necklace with it. So I could be wrong. But anyways, all that to say is that she's emulating royalty, yet she's not following what royals do. You almost get the impression that this was the I'm sexy tour. So I need to dress as sexy as possible. Because yes, I get it. It's hot. But royals generally don't have necklines down to your rib cage or slits way up the front. I mean, sometimes they have slits in the dress, not saying that they don't. Or spaghetti straps, strapless. They just generally don't do that for more, you could say, casual events. Sometimes for gala events, yes, they do. And so it leaned into the realm of, you felt like Meghan was just trying to look sexy. And it's like, but that's not the purpose of this visit. That's not the supposed purpose of this tour. This is about, I guess, promoting the Invictus Games and yourself. But she was clearly trying to emulate being royal. But what I thought was interesting to consider is you almost get the impression that she was thinking to herself, well, I was told I couldn't wear X, so now all I'm going to wear is X. Because I'm sure she was told at points the hemlines need to go down, the necklines need to go up. And that's just a part of royal life. And if she didn't want to live that, if she didn't want to abide by that, that's fine. But drop the title. Every time you call yourself the Duchess of Sussex, you confuse people. And Nigeria is also a rather conservative country in many ways. You saw many of the women with their shoulders covered, and she was trying to show as much skin as possible. You know, she had the backless dress pretty much. And it was also like flesh tone. So you almost got the hint of like nakedness. It's just like, this is not a red carpet. You're trying to emulate something and you're making a mockery of it at the same time. And again, I think that's something that damages the monarchy because she's mocking it. And they're also, because of illnesses, because of things they can't control, they haven't been out traveling quite as much, doing royal visits. And so people see this and they attach to this and think, oh, this is right. And so then they think, you know, Catherine is being too modest or too boring. It's like, no, she's not that. She's being royal. Meghan's being a celebrity. Catherine is royalty. There is such a difference. And it's so aggravating that Harry and Meghan seem to right now in so many ways, especially for an American audience, seem to be driving the royal narrative. And it's something that the royal family, again, needs to address because Harry and Meghan aren't going to stop until somebody stops them. And granted, they'll still probably do what they want to do, but at least if maybe they're demoted or publicly really, really separated in some way, that may be a bit of a wake-up call to the rest of the world that, yeah, I know it really doesn't behoove you to treat them as diplomats or anything special because you won't get anything special in return from the Brits because they're so separated right now. And also, again, the excess of the outfits, the clothing, the costs and everything, I think, again, reflects so poorly on Meghan. Royals do very well. You have to look smart, but you also can't do too much. And again, that's a line of royalty. But as long as Meghan Markle continues to claim the crown of royalty, she will be held to those standards. If she wants to not be held to those standards, drop the titles, just go by Meghan Sussex. As long as you're still calling yourself the Duchess of Sussex, we will hold you to the standards of the British monarchy and other royals, because I don't think that should end, because she should be held essentially to those standards. And if she's not, then we got a bigger problem going on. And the last point I want to make is that Harry and Meghan seem to prefer strangers over family, because we got several instances in this tour of just weird statements from Harry and Meghan regarding Meghan's especially Nigerian heritage. At some point she said it's like coming back to the motherland. Harry called a group of them my in-laws. So go ahead and take a listen to Harry.
In-laws. I'll skip the protocol because at this point we're all family.
Well, Harry, they're not your in-laws, and Meghan Markle, they're not your family. So here's the thing about ancestry searches, because I've experienced this because my dad was adopted. So there was a whole slew of information we had no idea about him. So I empathize with Meghan and her desire to know more about her heritage, because I did too, because I was just curious, you know, where did we come from? Who are our connections to our family? We had done ancestry and the DNA test, but at some point in the state where my dad was born, they officially released birth certificates. And so he was able to find out who the members of his family are. And it was very exciting. And obviously too, they are extended relatives to us. And we are slowly getting to know a lot of them, but there's still, you know, a little bit more of that friendship realm versus family, because yes, we might all be connected by blood, but we're not family in terms of having been raised together, having gone through trials together in the same way that people have actually been raised together as. There's a bit more of a separation, a bit more of a strangeness to it, but it's still absolutely lovely and amazing. And learning more about our extended family, you know, about the percentages my family comes from, I think, although it's changed in Ancestry, because if you haven't done Ancestry DNA, what happens is as they get more and more data, as more and more people submit their samples, they're able to narrow down sort of where you come from. So like, I think at one point we had like a Jewish connection that went away on my dad's side. We ended up having a connection to Cameroon for a brief instance, and then that went away. So now it's mostly focused on England and obviously Scotland and Scandinavia, so Denmark and Sweden. And I think in the UK at one point, although it's changed a bit now, there seemed to be a special connection to the Isle of Man. So I don't know if that's still correct or not. I actually want to go and look and see if I can learn more at some point. But I understand that, and it's cool. But guess what I have never, ever done in any time I've been to the UK? And I've been to the UK 5, 6, 7 times now. I've never walked into Heathrow Airport, found a British person, and go, hello, cousin. And I feel like that's sort of what Harry and Meghan are doing, is that they seem to be sort of trying to grasp for a family and creating one with strangers because they would prefer to not have somebody who actually knows them. I've noticed this a lot about Meghan. It's that when people actually get to know her, that's almost when she pushes them away more. And when it comes to family, family knows you best. Most of Harry's family told him Meghan Markle may not be the best choice in partner. And so he distanced himself from them. And I believe personally that most of their advice, their offerings were done in great good faith. They were like, Harry, we just, you say this, but we see some qualities here that concern us. And so we just want to let you know because we are family and family knows you best. And the Nigerians, yes, there is a familial connection somewhere down the line, but they're not her real family. They're not Harry's real family. They're not his in-laws. He's never even met his father-in-law. He's never met his brother and sister-in-law, half brother and sister-in-law. He has never met them. He has never met them. And Meghan, yes, she spent some time with the in-laws, but apparently, according to reports, once Archie was born, she never really let any of the extended family members see him. And then they whisked away before really Archie could get to know his cousins. They have separated themselves from everyone. And so because they don't have a family, they now need to create a new and different one with some other group. And it just strikes me as sort of bizarre because yes, obviously you have this new connection to this region, but where does it go back? What tribe? Those sort of things. Sometimes they can whittle down those pieces of information, but oftentimes they do change as well. And if it was really about Meghan's heritage and that was so important, why not bring her mother too? Because this is not a royal visit. They don't need to be doing necessarily royal things because it's not it. So why are you trying to emulate that? Why is that so important to you? Well, I think obviously Harry and Meghan have been hurt a lot by the criticism that they've obviously distanced themselves from his entire family, her entire family in many ways. And so it's their way, I think, of sort of trying to massage that. But just came across as, I think, disingenuous because the truth about family is they know you. They've spent a lot of time with you. They've seen your good side and your bad side. But Harry and Meghan, ever since especially Meghan's entered the fold, she only wants people to see her good side. She never seems to want people to really get to know her. And when they do, sometimes they tend to necessarily not like her. Because of that, she has a bad reaction to it. And I will always stand by the idea and notion that there's nothing healthy, I don't think, about a relationship where somebody drops their entire family and friends for reasons that don't make much sense. Because when you see the royals, they are very close. It is a hard group to break into, no doubt. They all have a bit of a guard up because they know people will take advantage of them. But once you get through that guard, I think there's a lovely, warm relationship there because the thing about royalty is that only certain people know what it's really like. And you value those people more because they're the only other people in the world in many ways who knows what it's like to be on this international stage without, you could say, a desire to. They were born into it. Because of that, there's a close cadre of people. And once you get into that and you can share and appreciate this very, very unique existence, Meghan Markle just didn't let herself get there. She wanted everything her way, and she wanted all of her relationships to reflect her value and what she wanted. And when the royal family just couldn't give that to her, and when not every member of the family could for various reasons, she was like, she didn't want any of them. So look, strangers will now do. She'll now go to Nigeria and look at this group of strangers going, you are my family, you are my motherland. And it just rings a bit hollow because charity and true family starts at home. And what she hasn't done for the last 6 years is really have any relationship with her father. And granted, I don't think she was ever particularly close with her half siblings, and I understand her reasons for keeping her distance. But at the same time, she should connect with her father. What about her other relatives, her mother's family? Does her mother not have any family? Because when you think about Meghan, and although she's clinging to this Nigerian identity, she has 57%, allegedly, that is not Nigerian. Where are those people in her life? Because she only wants to cling to this small minority that she thinks gives her an upper hand with certain segments of the population, rather than embracing her whole identity. Because I think the truth and the great thing is embracing all sides of yourself, the sides of yourself that come from your mother, your father, and those different aspects of your family. All of these situations come into play together. And so they all create aspects of your identity. I'm not just clinging to one and ignoring the others, because they're all facets of who we are and who we've become. And so I think it's incredibly disingenuous of Meghan to cling to this one aspect of her life while ignoring everything else. Because you're not just 43% Nigerian, you're not 100% that. You are 57% something else. And so what is that? Because that's critical to you as well. And so looking at Meghan Markle's Nigerian heritage, she clings to it. Yet at the same time, I don't feel like much of that was reflected on her side of St. George's Chapel when she married Prince Harry back in 2018. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think of the craziness of this tour. I'd love to get your thoughts. And thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you soon. Bye.